The war was mainly fought between France and Britain.
This was the land before the 7-Year War. The French was the green,
The Spanish were the blue,
the British were the red,
the pink were the Portugal,
the purple was the Russians,
and the yellow was the Dutch.
and this is it after the war. The purple was Russia, the blue was the Spanish, the red was the British.
The pink is Portugal and the yellow is Dutch.
Things they did for fun back then is they went to operas. They mainly did this because they didn't have any television or radio back then. And then also another thing they mainly did was gambling, which caused a lot of family enterprises, which wasn't really good. And then for sports, they mainly did horse racing, but they also did hunting, football, and cricket. Balls and dances were extremely popular, especially for women. They really got excited when they had a ball or dance. And then also another thing they did mainly in the nighttime was they went to bars and pubs, and then this is when they played cards a lot and gambled. And then there was also a lot of entertainers like acrobatics, jugglers, bite eaters, contours, and more. So I came up with an example of something that they could possibly wear back then. It obviously wouldn't be correct because I don't have the type of clothing and the pieces that they used to wear back then. But this would be an example of something they would wear. Something like an elaborate dress with like the hoop skirt and like the lace and maybe even a corset. And then I put in a like big frilly puffy hat with a lot of feathers and then even a feather sticking out of it. And then they would just wear like stuff like that that are very colorful and elaborate, and yeah. Here are some examples of some things they actually wore back then. As you can see, they were very elaborate, as I said, and a lot bigger than my example was. And then the boys also wore stuff like that, but obviously it wasn't like skirts and stuff. It was like suits.
The men's outfits, though, consisted mostly of jackets, long pants, high boots, and especially hats.
The 7-Year War was the result of trading rights. The British colonists were packed against the Atlantic seaboard with 33 times more the population than the French, with less than half the land area. The British found the need to expand west, but to do so, they would have to go into the Ohio Valley, which was controlled by the French. The strategies for the French and the British weren't very good, especially for the French. The French took their smaller troops and worse weapons and used them in the colonies, and their larger troops and their better weapons and used them in Europe. The British did exactly the opposite. They took their better weapons and better troops and used them in the colonies, and their worse weapons and worse troops and used them in Europe. Although they both used the opposites, the British won both times. Most times.
The first book was published on April 15th, 1755. It was written by Samuel Johnson. It's called A Dictionary to the English Language, also known as Johnson Dictionaries. It's one of the most influential dictionaries in the history of English language. It didn't really have much of an effect on the war, and the war didn't have much of an effect on the book because it was published right as the war was beginning, but it was still a very important piece of literature in that time. Newspaper article written in 1763 about the war. Although the author didn't take a side on the article, it was obvious that they had one, considering it was near the end of the war. The last article is Candide by Voltaire. The central message in this is everything is as good as it can be, and I don't think that this message still holds true today.
As the war progressed, France's navy began to cripple, thus leading to the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1763 on February 10th. In the signing, Britain gained North America and India, leaving France to be the overall loser of the war.
After the war was fought and the British had won, they gained all the land in North America owned by the French.
The Portuguese gained land in South America and Africa. The Spanish also gained land in South America.